Hi, everybody. Welcome. Sorry we're starting a few minutes late, but welcome. We have a really great live cast for you today. Again, this is brought to you by the Institute of Metaphysical Science. And the Institute of Metaphysical Science is located at scientificmetaphysics.org. We are going to be talking with you about a letter in a brand new manuscript that we've been editing that's going to become available on pre-order basis only. So everyone who pre-orders will end up getting it produced and mail them out. So there is a letter in that manuscript that was written. A student of Margaret Laird's, Mrs. Laird's, wrote this letter to her son. And this was an address that Margaret Laird presented in the 50s, 1950s, sometime in there. And any rate, so this was an address that she wrote that she did that is absolutely excellent. It's called What is the Idea? And so we're going to just kind of break down this letter and then look at it and just discuss it and all of that. If at any point you guys want to go out there and pre-order the booklet, What is the Idea? You can just go to scientificmetaphysics.org/pre-order, and that you can order it and it will be sent to you. So I just wanted you to also know about that. Hi, Betty. How are you today?
I'm fine. You might add that the document is expected to be available before the middle of July.
Okay, very good. So we're going to be getting it produced here. So you only have a short time left to pre-order it so that you get one if that's of interest to you. Okay, so basically I'm going to read the first couple of paragraphs and then we'll just start discussing it. Okay, does that sound good, Betty?
Yeah, the first paragraph and then the second one.
Okay, very good. So it says, my dear, each of us has demands made upon him that he needs to live and grow, to discover himself. Those of us who meet these demands to give up the personal sense of self and the rebellion and hurt over the actions of another, no matter what it costs in the way of self-discipline, are living. Those of us who go to pieces, feel sorry for ourselves and are filled with resentment and blame another for what is our own faulty vision, are not living. Such one only postpones the inevitable day when life makes a demand for self-discipline that cannot be ignored. Those who blame others, their parents, their teachers, etc., for their difficulties are not living creatively because they do not love. Now, that's a pretty powerful statement right there. But let's back up. So if we go back up to the first paragraph, those of us who meet these demands to give up the personal sense of self and the rebellion and hurt over the actions of another are living. Just paraphrased it here, but let's discuss that first paragraph, Mom. Betty.
Yeah, well, you know, we all have situations and circumstances around everyday living. And it is really helpful as a student of metaphysics, scientific metaphysics, it's helpful to recognize that what's really going on is you discovering something about yourself of which you were unaware. And most of the time, we have no idea how powerful each one of us is. That capacity is there, often untapped, unrecognized, unacknowledged. So if you can see that your every situation, every circumstance, every event happening, what you read, who you meet, what you do, how you do it, all of that is the laboratory you have for discovering yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, how you approach things, what works, what doesn't work, what you become a habit of doing. And sometimes the habits are good and sometimes they're a real hindrance. So you just need to take a look. Who am I being? And let that be the guide for your everyday development.
Right. I mean, if we even look at that very first sentence, each of us has demands made upon him that he needs to live and grow. So the demands placed
Yeah.
can be explored from the standpoint of this is for my own self-discovery. This is for my own growth. Let's talk a little bit about that, because a lot of times I can tell you they do not occur that way.
You mean they're not received that way?
Exactly. They don't occur to me that way all the time, right? And I imagine people can relate to that.
Yeah.
So what it is, and then we say, those of us who meet these demands to give up the personal sense of self. Talk a little bit about the personal sense of self, what that is, what that means, what this gal's referring to when she's writing to her son.
Well, she's pointing out to him that the normal label that you recognize as being yourself isn't all there is to you. There's a whole lot more. And if you're just being the label, you're missing the boat.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the personal sense of yourself is the picture you present, like Betty for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot more there than that.
Right. And so live from the divinity. If you were to say, if who we are is so much bigger than this picture of myself, this concept of Kim, then there's a divinity present.
Yeah.
That's being me and the world I walk through come
Yeah.
from that larger context.
Right.
In terms of relating to who you are, as opposed to just the picture.
Yeah, and we're diving into all of these things, but obviously this mother has that connection already with her son, so he knows exactly what she's talking about. And if something has occurred and he's busy blaming someone else, she's reminding him that you can't be busy blaming somebody out there when actually all of your living is right where you are, all of it. And nobody makes it but you.
Right. And she refers to all of that stuff as faulty vision.
Yep.
Because you're relating to, you as an object and other people out there in your world as objects that can do things to you or affect you that way.
Yeah, and Mrs. Laird had a great saying for all of that. She said that may be the way it looks. It is not the way it is.
Ah.
And students of science are interested in the way it is.
Yeah.
So she's just reminding her son.
Now, talk to me a bit about this. So one of the bold statements in the last paragraph that I read, those who blame others, their parents, their teachers, etc., for their difficulties are not living creatively because they do not love. Yeah. Say that to me in a way, restate that or explain some of that, because it seems awfully harsh.
Okay, well, the word love is a loaded word in human living. We all have a concept of love that we think is love, and it doesn't begin to touch the hem of what love is. Mrs. Laird used to say, a love is the awareness that only perfection is. Well, think about that. Being aware that only perfection is, where is the accusation that you over there did that? What difference does it make who did what if it's all love present? So there's no finger pointing, there's no blame, there's no guilt, there's just none of that human stuff clouding the vision that sees that it's exactly right the way it is, and on we go.
Right. And that brings up the very next sentence, which is the love, capital L, or spiritual vision. To experience the God idea joyously, whatever the incident may seem to be, is the creative living that will transform your world.
Yeah, because you're coming from everything's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Well-being is intact. What's the old thing? God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. That's what's going on. And when you come from that, you're open to see a whole new whatever show up to answer whatever the need is.
Yeah.
So you can give up on your, it's not my fault. He did it to me. All of that.
Right.
And just say, hey, wait a minute. There is a universal intelligence functioning. All is infinite mind. And it's all fundamentally based in perfection right at the outgo.
Right.
So there's nothing to fuss about. But there is a whole lot to see with your spiritual vision rather than to look at as if it were the circumstances that you see around you.
Yeah. Okay. And she goes on to say, love never expects to be loved. Love, capital L, never expects to be loved, because the love, again, capital L, you love with is the love that loves you.
Exactly.
Now, let's just back up just a little bit, just for the people that might be new to this conversation. When I say capital L versus just love, plain old, lowercase, distinguish those two, please.
Well, the lowercase is a concept.
Okay.
Concept of love. Capital love is love as it is.
Right.
Not as you believe
right.
it is.
So when we talk about the paradox and you've got as much good as bad, you've got as much love as hate, you've got as much, this or that, and they're two ends of the spectrum. Picture. And that's the paradox. But love, capital L, would encompass the whole paradox.
Well, that's not a way to say it, Kim.
Okay.
It isn't that it encompasses it. It's that
it constitutes it.
Well, capital love is all there is. The way you see it
is somewhere along that spectrum.
Is the language of paradox.
Okay, got it. So
your concept is the language of paradox.
Right. So capital L love is all there is. And you're going to see it in the mode of paradox as love, hate, somewhere along that continuum.
Yeah. Capital love is almost like saying the God idea.
Okay. All right, cool.
It sources what's going on.
Yeah.
It's reality present.
Very good. So then she goes on and she says, if another can hurt you, make you unhappy and rebellious, and if the incidents of daily life can throw you for a loop, you can be sure you do not love. If you loved, you would have the intelligence to see that you yourself are the arbiter of your fate.
Yep. You are the authority in your life, whether you acknowledge it or not. You live with a certain amount of dominion when you acknowledge it. Otherwise, you live yourself as a victim, blindly not accepting the fact that there isn't anything going on outside of the being you right now.
Yep.
There's just really one thing going on. Perfection present, self-evidencing, self-manifesting, self-realizing, self-sustaining, constituting all that's going on.
Yeah.
And we live it as we see it. And when I say see, I'm talking about as your imagination, your vision, Margaret called it spiritual vision, but as your vision of being itself being, as that is unfolding for you, you are living in terms of that fact of you. If you're living yourself as Betty, as a two-legged animal, then your world unfolds with Betty living herself as a victim, because thinking that the world out there is making claims upon her time and her being and so on. And she's the only one present, not Betty, but the being that has Betty show up.
Right.
That's all there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about, let's explore this, because we had a question from that came in between last week and this session that says, how do I give up a concept or belief of myself? And I think this is what we're talking about right now. So address that question.
Okay, if you are approaching, how do I give up a concept? You can't. You're stuck with it because all a concept is is your current point of view. So to move on from that, we call it giving it up, but you actually have to leave it alone. To
Okay.
move on from that is the living of the acknowledgement of what's so. When I can acknowledge that divine love is all that's present, whole, perfect, complete right now, that is the giving up of the concept. And you move on to a new concept.
Right. And there's no
but you
right.
move on.
And there's no time here. It's like boom. You give it up, it's that instant.
Yeah. You're not a victim at that instant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So then she goes on and she says, everything that comes up is a challenge for creative living. No one knows from the human standpoint why this or that. But we do know that sooner or later, the reality must be faced that it is not what life brings to us, but what we bring to life in our spirit, capital S, that is important. What life does to us in the long run will depend on what life finds in us.
Yep. So and what it finds in us is what we are living consciously, what we are acknowledging as fact.
Right.
And the language doesn't lie. I hate to tell you that, but the stuff that shows up for you is actually accurate to what you basically are living as if it were true. The concepts I have tell me how I'm living myself as a two-legged animal.
Yeah.
And it's changed a lot since I was 2 or 4 or 10 or 12 or 20 or 30. It changes all the time. But actually, the picture tells me what my belief system is all about. This is the best it can do for me. The only thing that moves me off of this is the acknowledgement that that may be the way it looks, but there is one universal, self-sustaining being itself, being me. And it's a lot more present than Betty.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the Betty piece to play with in the daily stuff, but there's more present. And that more that's present is actually the authority that I have to be everything that I need to be and do everything I need to do.
Right. That's really good. And she goes on. Another point. No one finds life worth living. Each one has to make it worth living. And the way is always the way of love, capital L. The capacity to spiritually elevate every difficult experience and turn it into a major achievement.
Read that again, because that defines the love that she's talking about.
Right. She says, another point. No one finds life worth living. Each one has to make it worth living. And the way is always the way of love, capital L.
And love is what?
All.
No, love is what you're coming to right now. You define.
Love is what? The capacity to spiritually elevate every difficult experience and turn it into a major achievement.
Read it again, because the word is evaluate.
Love, the capacity to spiritually evaluate every difficult experience and turn it into a major achievement.
Yeah, thank you. Just think of that. Spiritually evaluate. What does that mean?
Look at it in terms of who I am, in terms of the divinity of me, not the concept of me.
Yeah, and the thing that's always true is that you are right at your fingertips. You have the answers that you're looking for. You have the solutions that you would like to see show up. And all it takes is the recognition or the acknowledgement of what's actually constituting that solution.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing that constitutes the solution is already present, even though you're seeing it as a concept that you don't really like.
Right. If I'm seeing it as a problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the spiritual evaluation is the willingness to say, wait a minute, that may be the way it looks, but there's only one intelligence functioning here. All is infinite mind, infinitely manifest right now, right here, looking just like this. So I have to pay attention to my seeing. How am I seeing it that I victimize myself?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the fact here? Oh, well, Betty thinks she sees something. But what has Betty got? She's got no capacity to see.
Mm-hmm.
She's just the piece in the game that you're using to play the game.
Right.
But the being of you has the answer before it even shows up as a problem.
Right.
In fact, the solution present demands the problem to have it show up.
Right.
And that's spiritually evaluating what looks like a problem.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
So she goes on and she says, this is the way of love, capital L. Looking at everything impersonally as the demand of truth, capital T, for recognition leads to dominion as well as to the possession of the good that we have sought for in the wrong place as a belief of good.
Yeah.
Remember, it is our belief of what is good that keeps us from experiencing the good in full measure.
Yeah. You want to say anything about that?
No, I was just waiting for if you did.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been talking about. So I think go right ahead.
Yeah. Right. I mean, can you imagine? I just want to step back. Can you imagine getting a letter like this from your mother? It's fabulous. And I will say right now, what's very cool is that as Betty was editing the manuscript that came to her edited, and then she went through it another time, she printed this out for me and she gave it to me and said, Kim, every time you get hooked by some circumstance, you get into a reactive mode, just read this letter. And I got to tell you, since I've had it, I've read it many times, and it's fabulous. It's centering my own experience of whatever is going on. So that's why I said we've got to cover this letter in a live cast. So here we are. So she goes on and she says, this is the way of love. Oh, I already did that. Looking at everything impersonally as the demand of truth for recognition leads to dominion, as well as to the possession of the good that we have sought for in the wrong place as a belief of good. Remember, it is our belief of what is good that keeps us from experiencing the good in full measure. Now, the next part. Oh, go ahead.
Say something on that, Kim.
Uh-huh.
When anybody has a problem come up, and then you figure out some answer for it, and you move along, and it comes up again, and you fuss with it and figure out an answer, and you keep moving along, and then it comes up again. What's happening is that you're hooked on a concept that you have of what the solution is or should be.
Right.
And that is going to have it repeat and repeat and repeat until you get that the concept has no power, no presence, can't solve anything. You have to leave it alone. Just leave it alone and be open to what else is possible.
Right. Right.
And as you begin to identify everything that's going on with you as a spiritual event, it's actually your own divinity showing up saying, see, here I am. Come on. Total dominion, whole, complete, perfect, joyous, free. Come on, come on. That's what's going on. And when you doggedly hang on to, and we all do this, the way we really like it in human living, we're stuck. So we're going to have a repetitive thing occur and occur and occur until we say, all right, I give up. You know, Margaret used to say, take a hand, God, I can't figure it out. then there's an opening.
That's right. Yeah. The demands of truth or reality, capital R, to identify the good in all ways will continue to come up as problems so long as they are necessary to the discovery that the life, capital L, you now live is spirit, a way of thinking, wholly good and wholly satisfying.
Yeah, it's being itself, being you.
Right. It's like you're satisfied whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
Or you could look at it like satisfaction. Being satisfied is a declaration, is a stand, because it comes from who you are.
Yeah, and the only time that you know for sure that you're not hanging onto a concept is when you can look at any old picture that shows up and stand there and say, I'm satisfied.
Right.
Because that's not what's going on.
Right.
And your satisfaction is not included in that picture.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at a much different.
And the satisfaction that you're consciously acknowledging, that you're consciously being, comes a solution.
Right. Yeah. So then she goes on and says, when one loves, he is without emotional reactions to the way things look. He solves problems and works out the limitations of his personality automatically. The necessity to have problems for the focusing of truth is a personality factor.
Yep.
Self-discipline, personality gives place to true individuality, and the necessity for problems vanishes.
Okay.
That is a powerful paragraph.
I know. You need to go back and do a couple of sentences.
Okay, so first sentence, I'll start there. When one loves, he is without emotional reactions to the way things look. He solves his problems and works out the limitations of his personality automatically.
Yeah, and through self-discipline, personality gives place.
Yes.
To individuality.
Right. True individuality. Because too many people have individuality being a concept over here. Do you know what I mean? I'm just being myself. You know, and that's the way they dress. It's the way they wear their hair. It's, you know, all that stuff tied up in it, whether or not they have to wear a mask during COVID, all tied up in your own sense of individuality and personal freedom. But that's the concept. You're missing the whole boat.
Yeah.
It's holding you separate from the world you walk through. Okay. So then you can really discover what individuality is.
Yeah. You know, when you have an emotional reaction to something, and it comes up all the time, you know, just have a problem show up and it's, oh dear, what am I going to do? Have somebody disappoint you, have somebody die, have somebody forget you.
Mm-hmm.
And the emotional response to that lets you know that you're busy being the two-legged animal. Mm-hmm. At the very moment that you need to say, wait a minute. There's just being itself being, and this thing shows up. Mm-hmm. Nothing's happening to the thing. What's going on is divine being emerging, really demanding acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. And when you leave the thing alone, I don't know whether it should be this way or that way or some other way. I don't know whether it needs to be fixed or not fixed. But I do know that the being me, is not that thing sitting in the chair. Mm-hmm. So when I can get focused on the fact that divine being is all that's present, even though this is the language that I see it in my present moment of living, the perfection is present. The reality is present. The truth is present. Love is present. Right. Life in all its vitality is present. The fact that I'm not seeing it that way tells me that I'm depending on the picture instead of the fact.
Yep.
The minute I acknowledge the fact, I move on.
Yep. Yeah,
And
and your world moves on.
Yeah, the acknowledgement is not the words, but it's who you're being as you see what you're saying. When I acknowledge that all is infinite mind, then I know that I'm not talking about anything going on in the brain. I'm talking about a universal intelligence that's presencing all the time. And this is the way I see it. And this is the way I see it. And oh, it looks like that and that and that. But the intelligence presencing is universally perfect and whole, nothing missing, knows all the answers long before the questions show up. That kind of thing.
Right.
So that's spiritually evaluating. Okay, I didn't mean to.
So we have 2 more paragraphs pretty much. And it is you, and here's the next one. You cannot be a victim of a difficult personality, either that of yourself or another. If you do not accept the personality as what is being,
that's the end of the sentence. Read it again.
If you do not accept, okay, that's right. So let me do that again. When one love, no, you cannot be a victim of a difficult personality, either that of yourself or another, if you do not accept the personality as what is being.
Yeah, right.
In other words, that's not what you're relating to. You don't relate to the concept. You relate to the divinity present.
You know, who is it?
Imagine how that would change your relationships in the world.
Yeah, because who is it that's seeing a difficult personality?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, who is it that thinks they're being difficult?
Right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
The minute I let go of the picture around me and see that what the reality is that's present, regardless of how it's showing up.
Right.
You know, who says it has to look like that?
Yeah.
What is present is perfection.
Yes.
Whole, complete, right now.
Right.
And if I want to call it difficult, then I'll live it as difficult.
Right. Right. And I'll have my whole world out there being difficult.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Creative living is often uncomfortable and attended by struggle and hardships. I mean, this takes discipline.
Yeah, it isn't easy. I tell you, when it becomes a painful problem, you're willing to attack it. But if it's one you have fun with, I don't want to get rid of that. I don't want to let go of that. That concept's pretty darn good, and I want to hang on to it. Right. That's a real pitfall. That'll really get you in trouble to get too attached to the way it looks when you think it's fun or cute or delightful or any of those things. All of it that I can see, feel, hear, taste, or touch is just a concept. It's a belief about an unbelievable perfection that's already present.
Right. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the story about what's the difference between you and a dog. And the difference between you and a dog is that the dog can go from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. In other words, have you ever, I mean, everyone who has a dog knows this, right? They go get the ball, they bring it back. They go get the ball, they bring it back. And then you're tired of throwing the ball. So they bring you the bone and you're like, no, I'm all done. And they go, okay. And they drop the bone, they go lay down for a while. And then you do something and they get back up and they grab the bone and they come back over and they're like, okay, ready right now. And they keep doing that. They go and you say no, they go away and they come back. And human beings don't do that. We have our failures mean something, you know? So I just thought of that as you were talking on that one.
Yep.
So the next paragraph starts out, the reason is that love, capital L, demands many sacrifices of self-interest and self-enjoyment. But just as often is creative living wonderful, with surprises at every turn of the road. The demand of life to live creatively, expression is the fundamental law of life, is like an outstretched hand.
Go ahead, finish it up. The next sentence is
okay. Good. Take it and go with it wherever it leads, with no thought of self-benefit. Roll with the punches until the job is done. No postmortems, no backward looks. We all learn by experience.
Yeah.
Mother. That's the whole letter. Pretty fun, right?
It's a good letter.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do and what's scrolling across the bottom is this is just a letter that's inside this whole address called What is the Idea? And it's a address done by Margaret Laird in the 1950s. It's been unpublished. We've been editing it and getting it ready for publication. And it will be going to the people who pre-order. We're only going to have that many made, maybe a few more. But we're only having that many made. So it's What is the Idea? And it's at scientificmetaphysics.org/pre-order. So if you would love to have a copy, get in now. We're getting them produced pretty soon. So we'll be closing down the pre-orders and then we'll go get them produced and we're sending them out sometime mid-July. So if that's of interest to you, then great. Otherwise, you can go out to our website at scientificmetaphysics.org and explore what's available out there. We have lots of different things available that you could participate in. And otherwise, we're here every Wednesday, starting just about always at 5 o'clock Pacific or 7 o'clock Central. And we look forward to seeing you the next time. We welcome any comments. Let me just look. I see 2 comments right now. And one is Bruce, who came in and said, super presentation on that letter, Kim and Betty. So that's awesome.
Good.
So there's Bruce.
The other thing to remember is that it is available on Facebook now and YouTube.
Right. Well, both of
Letter.
our live stream is,
That's
right? And then Jennifer says, how frequently do you think we are humans living compared to spirit living?
How frequently?
Do you think we are humans living compared to spirit living?
All the time. It's like human. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. That's the way it looks. No, that's not the way. Well, yeah, it's all the time. It's constant. I think Betty's around all the time.
Yeah.
I give up on her a lot, but she's there.
Yeah, but you got to look at, well, what constitutes that? So you've got being, identity showing up as language.
Yeah.
So you've got all the language. It's always going to be there.
That's
the
right.
human picture isn't going away anytime soon.
It shifts, but it doesn't go away.
It shifts, but it isn't the causative force in living.
That's right. Good.
And when you can true yourself up, to the causative force in living, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what the letter identifies.
Yeah.
So anyways, we'll see you next time. Until then, thank you, Betty. We'll see you again next week. Same time.